Dear guests, esteemed speakers, on behalf of the German Commission for UNESCO, I am delighted to welcome you all to the launch event of the Fair Culture Charter. I'm impressed by the large number of participants joining us from all over the world, representatives from ministries, NGOs, cultural institutions, as well as individual artists and creatives. Today is a special day. It marks the culmination of 6 years of work of the German Commission for UNESCO and one important step on a long journey to be continued. The Fair Culture Charter is a groundbreaking document for more equitable and sustainable cultural relations and working conditions in the cultural sector based on the values of justice and fairness. At the same time, its genesis is an encouraging example of successful international collaboration that will be continued and expanded in the years to come. I would like to thank our partners, especially the advisory board and the editorial team of the Fair Culture Initiative, who have been working intensively on the elaboration of the Charter since 2022. My special thanks go to Véronique Guèvremont, chair of the editorial team of the Charter, and to my colleague Lutz Möller and his team for the organization not only of today's event, but also of the entire process. Now I would like to hand over to today's moderators, Anupama Shika and Faraj Mumfunya. Thank you all, and I'm looking forward to an exciting event.
Thank you. My name is Anupama. I'm a cultural manager and a part of the editorial team that has been working to put together the Fair Culture Charter for many months now. I'm joining you today from Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. And with me is another member of the editorial team who will introduce himself to you. Farai, over to you.
Thanks very much, Anu. It's good to see you. My name is Farai Mfunya. I'm also part of the editorial team. I'm an expert in governance of culture. I am excited to be here today and speaking with you, helping to moderate this important event from Zimbabwe in Harare.
Thanks, Farai. Looking forward to having this conversation together with you and all our participants over the next 2 hours. As you all know, we're all here today because we do believe in a fair culture for all. And the Fair Culture Charter, which we are here to launch today, is very important in this context. For me personally, it is both a form of commitment as well as a practical guide, a compass for our everyday actions in the sector to ensure fairness for all cultural workers. I really also appreciate the fact that the Charter has been developed through a participatory process by a group of cultural experts, many of whom you will meet today. We came from different parts of the world. We worked together from March of last year. We discussed, we debated even more on what it means to be fair in the cultural sector until we finally arrived at the text of the Charter. And I will now turn to Farai to tell us about his experience with the drafting of the chapter and, most importantly, what happens next with our Fair Culture Charter. Over to you, Farai.
Great. Thanks very much, Anu. Like I said, we are really excited to be here today and feel honored to have all of you from all over the world joining us at different times of the day. The fact that some people like myself from the Global South are here and moderating and participating with colleagues we've worked with in the last 2 years and in the last 6 years means that we have personally invested time in making sure that this important text comes to life today. And it is important that we do it like this because you're going to hear many, many voices, global policymakers, artists, creatives, institutions that are responsible for the governance of culture, partners that have been already signed up and individuals who have already signed up to the Fair Culture movement, as well as live performances by artists from 3 continents of the world. And it is that kind of spirit that led us to work together towards this very important initiative. I would like to emphasize that the text in itself that will be launched today is not the end of this long process, but it is really a beginning of a process that will see further elaboration, further buying into the Charter movement by individuals and also by organizations. And the text itself, therefore, will become something more than just text. It will become a movement that we are hoping will excite all of you to join. The Fair Culture Charter, its goal really today, starting, is to generate and strengthen the movement that brings together the partners that I've talked about, and also a growing alliance of people towards this end. Therefore, the main objective of the Charter is to interest you here, those on YouTube following in the live stream, and new partners, particularly for you to also sign up to this initiative. And so, in short, the program will be in a combination of these lived experiences, the process, what actually the Charter is all about, and then in the end, the live launching, and then articulating a way forward from here. Back to you, Anna.
Thanks, Farai. We will now move on to some special messages that we have received, which underline the importance of fair culture and the value of the Charter in different geographies, different contexts, and for different types of cultural actors. Our first message today comes to us from Kenya, from Ms. Omi Bashir, CBS, Principal Secretary, State Department for Culture and Heritage, Ministry of Gender, Culture, the Arts and Heritage, Republic of Kenya. We will now hear from Ms. Omi Bashir.
The Assistant Director General for Culture at UNESCO, Mr. Ernesto Otone, German Minister of State at the Federal Foreign Office, Ms. Katja Keul, Secretaries General of NATCOM present, experts from various international cultural institutions, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, warm greetings from Kenya, Hamjambo. I am greatly honored to be invited to speak on behalf of Kenya's Minister for Culture at the online launch of the Fair Culture Charter. On behalf of the Republic of Kenya, may I take this opportunity to congratulate the partners and experts that contributed to development of the Fair Culture Charter. Ladies and gentlemen, the Fair Culture Charter is very relevant to the 2005 UNESCO Convention on the Protection and Promotion of the Diversity of Cultural Expressions, which Kenya ratified in the year 2007, and the UNESCO 1980 recommendation concerning the status of the artists, and further supports the commitments made by the Ministers of Culture of the member states of UNESCO during the UNESCO World Conference on Cultural Policies and Sustainable Development, Mundia Cult 2022, held in Mexico City. The Ministers' Conference indeed called upon member states of the UNESCO to reaffirm commitment to formulate and also implement forward-looking culture policies that fully harness the transformative impact of culture for sustainable development. Particularly, the declaration advocated for fostering and promotion of inclusive culture and creative industries within member states through the effective implementation of UNESCO 2005 Convention and the UNESCO 1980 recommendation. Among the key strategies identified for promotion of inclusive industries, creative industries include guaranteeing the social and economic rights of artists and cultural professionals, facilitating their mobility, addressing inequalities in culture and also the creative industries, addressing imbalances in exchange of cultural goods and services between countries of the Global South and the Global North, as well as participatory dialogue of all stakeholders in culture policy making processes. Culture and creative industries in Kenya, just like many developing countries, have continued to face many challenges as they are mainly informal. The conversation today about fair culture is crucial and urgent, especially in our context. I am proud to know that Kenya, through the UNESCO-Kommission for UNESCO, actively participated in formulation of the Fair Culture Charter. And on behalf of Kenya, I would like to wish and thank the German National Commission for UNESCO for supporting Kenya in stakeholder dialogues on fair culture practices. The Charter is an inspiration that will re-energize the Government of Kenya's development agenda, particularly on development of digital superhighway, promotion of creative economy, and micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as women empowerment in culture and creative industries. The State Department of Culture, the Arts and Heritage encourages other countries and organizations to endorse the Fair Culture Charter and also to embrace its values and principles to improve the socio-economic rights and conditions under which the artists and the culture creative sector operates. As I conclude my remarks, I sincerely wish to thank the Fair Culture Advisory Board for this wonderful initiative and all the stakeholders from across the globe that have joined us today. It is my hope that this document will become a vector for transformative policies and interventions for addressing challenges for sculpting the culture and creative sector across the world. Thank you very much. Asanteni sana.
Thank you to Ms. Bashir for her message. Our next message speaks to fair culture as critical for equity and comes from Her Excellency Ms. Katja Kohl, German Minister of State at the Federal Foreign Office, Germany.
On behalf of Germany, I welcome you to the launch of the Fair Culture Charter. Today marks a special moment in our collective work towards creating a more equitable, just, and inclusive cultural sector across the globe. Culture and the arts have always been the beating heart of societies, reflecting our values, challenging our perceptions, and inspiring change. Yet, while artists and cultural professionals contribute profoundly to our communities, they often face obstacles that hinder their ability to thrive. For example, insufficient pay, a lack of social protection, a lacking recognition of intellectual property rights, a limited access to recipients and markets for cultural goods and services, a limited mobility of the artists themselves. The Fair Culture Charter in front of us today is not just a document, it is a commitment. A commitment to address these challenges and to forge a path where fairness, respect, and dignity are at the forefront. This charter is the result of extensive collaboration across the cultural sector. We are proud that it has been formulated through an exemplary global co-design process. It embodies our shared vision for a future where every artist and cultural professional is afforded the rights and recognition they deserve. This vision is deeply rooted in the principles enshrined in the UNESCO-Convention on the protection and promotion of the diversity of cultural expressions. The Convention emphasizes the need to create environments where diverse cultural expressions can flourish freely, without discrimination and with full recognition of their economic and social values. The Fair Cultural Charter builds upon this global framework, translating these principles into concrete action tailored to the unique needs of our cultural communities today. Today, as we launch the Fair Culture Charter, we are reaffirming our dedication to these principles. But the Charter should also serve as a guide and inspiration for policy changes, as well as inform institutional practices and empower artists and cultural professionals. Let me say very clearly, the success of this Charter depends on all of us, on our will and ability to implement the provisions of the Charter, on our determination to hold ourselves and our institutions accountable, and on our unwavering commitment to fairness in all our cultural endeavors. Responsibility lies not solely on the shoulders of policymakers and cultural institutions. The private sector plays a crucial role as well, through financing and investment, sponsorships and partnerships, and the creation of platforms and networks. We call on you to not only invest in the creative potential of our communities, but also to ensure that your engagement with culture and the arts is also fair, ethical, and inclusive. In closing, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to all partners from around the world who contributed to the creation of the Fair Culture Charter. I also wish to thank the Assistant Director General for Culture at UNESCO, Ernesto Ottone, and the UNESCO Secretariat for their consistent support. In particular, I congratulate the German Commission for UNESCO on starting the initiative more than 5 years ago and for driving the Charter process all the way up until today and into the future. Let us now go forward together and create a cultural landscape in which fairness is not just an aspiration, but a reality for all. Thank you.
Our thanks to Minister Kohl for this important message. We do live in very important and interesting times for culture, as we stand at the eve of the UN's Summit of the Future later this month. 2025 will mark the 20th anniversary of the 2005 Convention on the Protection and Promotion of the Diversity of Cultural Expressions. And it is the year we will have the next edition of the Mundiakult World Conference of Culture Ministers. To tell us why fair culture is critical at this time in the history of arts, culture and heritage is His Excellency, Mr. Ernesto Ottone, Assistant Director General for Culture at UNESCO.
The global trade in cultural goods and services has grown impressively in recent decades. The cultural and creative industries now account for 3.1% of global gross domestic product. However, despite this remarkable growth, this global trade remains deeply imbalanced. Developed countries continue to dominate the trade in cultural services, accounting for an overwhelming 95% of total exports, while less developed countries represent less than 0.5%. These disparities stem from factors such as the precarious status of artists and cultural professionals, and limited access to global markets. This hinders cultural diversity, perpetuates inequality, and prevents many stakeholders from fully benefiting from the global cultural economy. In light of these realities, the Fair Culture Initiative is a timely endeavor to address structural inequalities and encourage more fair trade principles. These efforts offer significant opportunities to encourage economic growth, enhance the competitiveness of developing countries, and foster deeper international cooperation. In line with our 1980 recommendation concerning the status of the artist and the 2005 Convention on the Protection and Promotion of the Diversity of Cultural Expressions, UNESCO is pleased to be closely associated with the Fair Culture Initiative. Our shared goals, particularly the preferential treatment for developing countries, outlined in Article 16 of this convention, are closely aligned. Tomorrow, UNESCO will convene an intergovernmental reflection group on the implementation of Article 16 to discuss the challenges and successful practices in implementing the article, and also to propose concrete measures for improving its application. In this light, we eagerly participate in your discussion and perspective on how to advance cultural cooperation and fairer trade relations in the cultural sector. As we move forward, UNESCO will continue to work towards anchoring culture as a standalone goal for the post-2030 development agenda, including in the Pact for the Future, to be adopted by the United Nations in September. Mondiacult 2025, to be held in Barcelona, will also be an opportunity to continue this advocacy, including through the launch of a new UNESCO Global Report on Cultural Policies. Allow me to commend the German National Commission for organizing this event and to thank you all for your participation. Dankeschön.
Thank you to the Assistant Director General for Culture. And now over to you, Farai.
Great. We will have 3 performances by artists. As I said earlier on, these artists and musical performances will come from us from 3 different continents: South America, Africa, and Asia. And the first one will be from Nairobi, Kenya. And I introduce these performances because it is important for us to have their voices here today. And they will represent the diverse musical traditions that are part of what artists do in practice. The artists' performances will allow us to listen in or to help us share their experiences of how their art and work relates to Fair Culture Charter and the movement itself. I will introduce the first of the performances and then we'll have the other 2 later. The first one is from Elisha Eli, a hip-hop artist from Nairobi, Kenya, who uses his platform to shed light on social realities. Elisha's messages resonate with a diverse audience in Kenya and beyond. Elisha shares a statement with us that I will read, and these are his words. He says, "My music blends local influences with global beats. My lyrics aim to bridge gaps, spark conversations, and celebrate the unique spirit of my hometown, Dandora. I sing about personal experiences, societal issues, the dynamic rhythm of urban life in Nairobi, and the challenges creatives face in securing resources and rehearsal spaces. Through my work, I hope to highlight the often overlooked struggles of artists striving to express their talents amidst limited opportunities. Like the Fair Culture Charter, I call for greater support and infrastructure for the arts." So this is the statement from Elisha Eli, and we will listen into one of his songs called Dandora.
Kuja Dandora utatuona, nina jeshi na kuanga kwa kona. Ukisnichu utapata utaporwa, believe in the street ya wajanja wakoda. Maarifa kwa business vidin kujipin kubegin kuwasanya ndio program in case kama biz buda hebu ukituona karibu kukwetu Dandora Dandora. Kuja Dandora utatuona, nina jeshi na kuanga kwa kona. Ukisnichu utapata utaporwa, believe in the street ya wajanja wakoda. Maarifa kwa business vidin kujipin kubegin kuwasanya ndio program in case kama biz buda hebu ukituona karibu kukwetu Dandora Dandora. Yeah brother, I feel venye vigeti kwa ibada. Squeeze kwanza si check niko fed up to venye these people forgetting window major the digital dead and kill the industry metan shit. Imagine you can be the top hit wakati kamati na taki hii country misi taki kubaki. Bado tumesimama tuko tani ile na vituko. Tumeshawasha wabezi zima jiko na wanajua ni ngumu fika mali mimi niko. Bado tumesimama tuko mtani bado ile na vituko. Tumeshawasha wabezi zima jiko na wanajua ni ngumu fika mali mimi niko. Kuja Dandora utatuona, nina jeshi na kuanga kwa kona. Ukisnichu utapata utaporwa, believe in the street ya wajanja wakoda. Maarifa kwa business vidin kujipin kubegin kuwasanya ndio program in case kama biz buda hebu ukituona karibu kukwetu Dandora Dandora. Kuja Dandora utatuona, nina jeshi na kuanga kwa kona. Ukisnichu utapata utaporwa, believe in the street ya wajanja wakoda. Maarifa Maarifa kwa business vidin kujipin kupigin kuwasanya ndio program in case una biz buda heko ukitona karibu kukwetu dandora dandora. Nina gang gang utatotoka ikipigin kwa bang bang jusi manjoda wamejipin. No blame game tukipatana kwenye routine zaga deng deng zigi design si tuko free. Himta ukitupata utati deep down ni ma tap tap daddy. TikTok na manguna wa IG ndo na sweet talk hawa masponyo ati. Hini trap si genge hizi mitaka tusaidiani ni nenge. Sina gidhaa ya kukaa na mawasenge. The legendary venye na ball kama kadenge. Himta ukitona si utati. Anytime inakonga ni mboka ji. We are fine na tugopi no nobody. Sindu capital city ya huku Nairobi. Himta ukitona si utati. Anytime inakonga ni mboka ji. We are fine na tugopi no nobody. Sindu capital city ya huku Nairobi. Niko happy to be here. Ati tutadedi hivyo ndo walidhania. Zile siku tuko begi tuko na gunia. Walituita madegi on the side we are here. Boom. Toka kitambo kama kala mashaka mimi nafanya mambo. Dandora 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 dandora. Ipo fiti. Ipo fiti. You know what time it is. Nilishile toka kitambo. Kuja dandora utatona. Nina jeshi na kwanga kwa kona. Ukismith utapata utapona. Believe in the street ya wajanja wakora. Maarifa kwa business vidin kujipin kupigin kuwasanya ndio program in case una biz buda hepo ukitona karibu kukwetu dandora dandora. Kuja dandora utatona. Nina jeshi na kwanga kwa kona. Ukismith utapata utapona. Believe in the street ya wajanja wakora. Maarifa kwa business vidin kujipin kupigin kuwasanya ndio program in case una biz buda hepo ukitona karibu kukwetu dandora dandora. Dandora.
Thank you very much, Alicia. Back to you, Anu.
Thanks, Farai. I'd now like to invite Jordi Balta, consultant and researcher in culture and international relations, and a member of the Fair Culture Charter editorial team, to introduce the Charter to us. Over to you, Jordi.
Thank you very much, Anupama. Very happy to be taking part in this important event today and to see so many people here. The Fair Culture Charter that we're presenting today is the result of a process of discussion and participation involving many artists, cultural workers, researchers, activists, and decision makers across the world. It also builds on and complements the international standards that exist in the field of cultural diversity and cultural rights, such as the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, the 1980 UNESCO recommendation on the status of the artist, and the 2005 Convention on the protection and promotion of the diversity of cultural expression, as it has already been mentioned. The connection with these existing international documents is reflected in how the Fair Culture Charter emphasizes the centrality of decent working conditions in the cultural sector and aims to foster more balanced and fair international cultural exchanges. At the same time, the Fair Culture Charter has drawn inspiration from other international initiatives. And in particular, we can highlight the Fair Trade movement as a key reference. In fact, the Fair Culture Charter takes a form similar to the Fair Trade Charter that has been in existence for several years. Just like the Fair Trade Charter, our Fair Cultural Charter is not a legal document, but it does establish a set of principles and commitments to contribute to its goals. Those who will sign it, who may be public or private organizations, as well as individuals, undertake to abide by those objectives and principles. We believe that by doing so, existing instruments such as the Convention on the Diversity of Cultural Expressions will be strengthened with its goals embedded in the work of more actors. The Fair Culture Charter will be public very soon, in just a few minutes. And what will you find when you consult it, when you check it? First of all, you will find the preamble that explains where this comes from, why, and how this Fair Culture Charter relates to other documents and initiatives. The preamble is then followed by a definition of what we mean by fair culture. We define it as a movement that wants to achieve decent working conditions for all artists, creatives, and other cultural workers. And after this, you will find a more precise set of objectives and 8 principles which complement one another. And I'm now going to share a short the 8 principles included in the Fair Culture Charter set out a set of commitments in complementary areas for those who sign the Charter in the following areas. First of all, decent working conditions and fair remuneration for artists, creatives, and cultural workers. Secondly, access to diverse cultural expressions and resources, which includes, among other things, the importance of culture and arts education and the particular respect which is due for the content from underrepresented, minority, or marginalized groups. Third, non-discrimination and gender equality in all areas of cultural employment and practice. Fourth, local development, which includes the need for public and private organizations, including multinational corporations and large businesses, to invest in capacity building, infrastructure development, and sustainable local markets. Fifth, market access, which emphasizes the need for preferential treatment for artists, cultural workers, and cultural expressions which are underrepresented in international exchanges. This also involves facilitating international mobility. Sixth, digital equity and ethics, including a commitment to use digital technologies to enrich the diversity of cultural expressions, to enhance human creativity, and to respect human rights, as well as to guarantee equitable access to digital tools. Seventh, respect for the environment, including a consideration of the environmental impact of cultural practices, the need to adopt measures in the field that are just, and the potential for creativity to foster empathy and to imagine alternative futures. And eighth, public and consumer awareness, because ultimately fair culture requires that the general public appreciates and respects the contributions of artists, creatives, and cultural workers. After this set of principles, the Charter ends with a final section that outlines the way forward. It invites anyone interested to sign the Charter and to implement its principles. It also recognized that the Fair Culture Charter should be a living document, which may be revised in the future if this is needed. I can assure you that the text you will find in the Charter is the result of careful consideration of the terms used. We have had exciting discussions when drafting it, and we hope that you will find much that resonates with your own experience, your practices, and your goals, so that this truly becomes a living process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jordi, for giving us that insider's look into the Fair Culture Charter. The Charter is now live. We invite all of you to go have a look at the Charter. The link has been just dropped on the chat to read it, to explore it further, and of course, most importantly, to endorse it, to sign it, and to join the journey to convert this text into a movement. And now, I will pass the floor to my colleague Farai to lead us into a conversation about the Charter. Over to you, Farai.
Great, Anupama. The Charter is live, and it's been a long process, a fruitful one, an enjoyable one, and we will hear a bit more about the experiences of coming to where we are today. We're going to have some discussions to give more light in terms of what has happened in the process and what will happen from now going forward. And to do that, we'll have 2 panel discussions. The first one I will lead with 4 panelists, and then the second one, Anupama will lead that. In this particular one, I will have on the panel 4 individuals who are experts in their own areas of practice. Marie-Julie Desrochers, who is Secretary General, International Federation of Coalitions of Cultural Diversity. and she's also a member of the advisory committee of the Fair Culture Charter. Secondly, we'll have Dominique Luquer, who is Secretary General, International Federation of Actors, and also a member of the advisory committee. Then thirdly, one of my own colleagues with Anupama, Katrina Stewart Santiago, who is a writer and founder of Bagasa in the Philippines. And she, like I said, was a member of the Fair Culture Charter editorial team. Last but not least, we have Eddie Joanna Gomez, who is the Director of Projects at Lojona Records in Colombia. And I know Eddie will speak in Spanish. So those are the four, and I welcome you, colleagues. Good to have you, and thanks very much for giving your time from your different parts of the world and different times. We will have a 20-minute or so discussion because of how tight our program is, and we have advised you to actually keep your answers to the few questions that I have for you short. If you feel that you have something more to say, I may cut you a little bit and then hold your thoughts for the next time I ask you to speak. So getting onto it, we've just been listening to Jordi about the processes of the charter and its contents and how it's structured, and that it's now a living document where we're inviting other colleagues to sign up to it and help implement it. My first question for you is, Jordi represented the content of the charter. What do you think, each one of you, is important about the charter's content that we have not heard from Jordi? And I will start with you, Marie-Julie.
Thanks a lot. So what I will say to that is maybe I will simply emphasize something that Jordi mentioned, which is the complementary of all the principles all together. The fact that the charter must be seen really as a holistic document that cannot be read separately. So I think the biggest complexity of all the process was to keep it comprehensive and short, but the importance of all the principles is really to be read in relation to each other.
Thank you very much. Nice and short. Katrina, what do you have to say? Is there anything, I know we work together and we worked with Jordi, but is there anything at all that Jordi missed?
I don't think he missed anything. I think, though, that I would highlight the fact that it's a document that's readable and therefore is more useful than most. We took such an effort at making sure the language was something that would be accessible for cultural workers and artists across the world, that it would be something that would be easy to translate, easy to talk about with artists, cultural workers, creatives in different contexts. And I do think that that is one of the great things about the Fair Culture Charter. It's that it doesn't keep you away from understanding what the 8 principles are and why these are important.
Yeah, thank you very much. I know very well that this is an area that we spent a lot of time going back and forth about how easy it is for all those people who are going to sign up and join into the movement. Eddie, what do you think? And you will speak in Spanish. I may have to go over to hear a translation, but what do you have to say about what Jordi said?
Hola a todos y todas desde Bogotá. Hoy más que nunca es supremamente importante hablar de justicia y ponerla en la primera línea de nuestras relaciones sociales, de las políticas y de la relación entre agentes, instituciones, entidades de cooperación. Solo resaltar que esta carta es una invitación a un pacto colectivo y social entre todos nosotros para que la vida, para que los agentes culturales, para que nuestro trabajo esté lleno de alegría, de esperanza y de posibilidades.
Well, thank you very much, Eddie. I know issues of local development and social relations are dear to you, and thanks for highlighting those things. Dominique, what do you think about what Jordi has just outlined there?
Well, I look at the charter and I see a recipe, and like all recipes, you need to have the right ingredients. If you have the right ingredients, then you have a wonderful meal. If you have too many complicated ingredients, then the experience is perhaps not so overwhelming. And I think the challenge that we had was to find those key ingredients. And I believe that we successfully managed to do so and come out with something that is at the same time comprehensive, whilst being easy to read and easy to identify with. And that does really bring together all our differences and our diversities and focuses on something that unites us all. So it's a federative document, I think, and the hope is that it's going to become a true inspiration going forward for all those that are committed to arts and culture around the world.
Well, thanks very much, Dominic. It leads me to my second question, really, because you talk about recipes and you were part of the process. Do you have any personal experiences of the process of formulating the charter that are memorable to you? So in your case, what is the recipe? What is the menu that was memorable to you in the process?
Well, I mean, as far as I recollect that exercise, first of all, I was honored to be a part of it. It was truly very exciting. It wasn't an easy exercise because we were all coming from different backgrounds with different viewpoints, different priorities, and it was sometimes challenging. And we had harsh discussions at some stage. It wasn't all hunky dory, but I think we endeavored to create something that is unifying, I think, understanding each other, listening to one another, to overcome our differences and to align our respective priorities towards a common goal. So the challenge and what makes this text a success for us is that we managed to go beyond ourselves. We engage with everyone else in as much an inclusive way as possible, understanding one another and giving as much consideration to each other as possible, and condensating all of that in the document.
Well, thanks very much. I'll come to Eddie. Eddie, I know we grappled a lot about translations and facilitations and exchanging of ideas in different languages, especially Spanish. What was memorable for you in this whole experience?
Bueno, para mí fue una experiencia muy importante que abrieran la puerta a trabajadores de la cultura activos, que trabajamos en el campo, en proyectos, en diferentes lugares, en mi caso de Colombia, de mi país, con músicos, con agentes de la cultura, que nos abrieran un espacio en este comité para aportar desde nuestra experiencia y junto a el resto de compañeros, de expertos, de investigadores, de intelectuales, poder también aprender de ellos y poder llevar nuestras propias reflexiones a esta carta, que como decía Katrina y los compañeros, la idea es que sea práctica, que la podamos utilizar en nuestro día a día, que no sea lejana para mí ni para la gente que está en diferentes regiones de Colombia. Entonces, para mí personalmente, como trabajadora de todos los días de la cultura, como gestora cultural, es muy importante que la UNESCO, que la Comisión Alemana haya abierto las puertas para nosotros hacer parte de este comité editorial, y va a ser una experiencia desde mi punto de vista inolvidable, enriquecedora, y que espero que desde mi lugar haya sido pues también un aporte importante para otros colegas como yo.
Well, thanks very much, Eddie. Talking about representing diverse, experiences and viewpoints from different parts of the world, you and Katrina, sort of opposite ends of the globe. And yes, Katrina used to bring all these different perspectives and very particular about it. Katrina, what were your memorable times during the process?
I think one of the bigger things that I really brought home from when we met in Paris last year was not just how diverse we are, but also how in the structure of cultural work, we came from very different levels of that hierarchy. I realized that even as I was a practitioner, I'm more of a writer and researcher from Southeast Asia and the Philippines. That so much of what I had to say was valuable and important, and that I am as much in this charter as is Jordi and Anu and you and Eddie and all of us who actually brought all of our energies and our brain cells into putting it together. I think I kind of also like the fact that our age difference was very huge. And that's not to say that you're much, much older than me, Farai. I'm just saying that I think the kind of demographic that we were able to gather together just in the editorial team was extra special. I think that it also allows for the charter to be, you know, something that people can access because they'll realize that we're a very diverse set of people there. There are experts, there are people who work in non-government organizations, practitioners, artists, etc. And I think that kind of is something that I brought home with me from Paris, that there is something to be learned from. And as Dominic said, it is possible to stand in solidarity on issues of arts and culture and rights and fairness regardless of where we all come from. It just takes a lot of listening, I think, and maybe also a lot of time, which is what we did for Fair Culture Charter.
Well, thanks very much, Katrina. Indeed, I think, therefore, Marie-Julie, you're coming from a space of international coalitions in cultural diversity. What were your experiences of inclusion and voices and inclusion of voices and practices and lived experiences?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Thank you. So that I think that was really the complexity of our discussions. The fact that cultural ecosystems are so complex and that the issues that we have to tackle to reach equity or fairness is really broad, depending the region of the world where you live, for instance. So we need to tackle, for instance, the digital divide, and in some countries, simply access to internet is still the main issue, and in other countries, the threats brought by artificial intelligence are really, really urgent. So to tackle all those issues all together and also to bring everybody in the cultural ecosystem together was a challenge because, of course, the main objective of the charter is to bring more decent working conditions for artists. But in order to achieve that, probably the people who accompany or invest in the career of those artists also need more equity from the bigger platforms. So it's all interrelated. So this was many discussions among us, but as it was said by my co-panelist, we did agree in the end. And I just want to say thank you to Katrina and Adi. It's the first time that we meet, the second time because we saw each other yesterday, but it was also a collective work, but without seeing and knowing each other. So that was also a challenge, and it's really interesting and enriching to see you and hear you today.
Well, thanks very much, Marie-Julie. I was going to ask you whether there were any contentious issues, but you've already answered it by saying that the process was complex, handling complex issues such as AI, language, and worldviews. And therefore, you know, it is a complex, you know, process that leads us to where we are today. And the charter text that's been launched is therefore what Jordi called a carefully considered wording. I know there were moments we were going back and forth in terms of what does advisory board say about that particular word or saying. Maybe going on to the next question that I have, and we'll start with you, Dominic. Out of the principles that Jordi talked about, is there any one of them that stands out for you, or are they all equal, Dominic?
Well, I think everything in the charter is really of great importance to us. But if I had to pick one principle that is particularly close to my heart and certainly over and above decent working conditions and fair remuneration, that would be the principle of digital equity and ethics. And our members are really faced with the challenges posed by the digital environment and new business models that have completely transformed the way in which content is produced, distributed, consumed, and paid for. And we believe that there is still a great deal to be done to bridge the value gap between the creators and those that are exploiting their work. And within that, the emergence of generative AI has really recently hit our members very hard, threatening to displace tens of thousands of jobs and put artists in competition with digital versions of themselves or synthetic artists. And we do believe that it's really essential to adopt proper safeguards in this field to enable these technologies to develop, but has already been said, in a human-centric way and without seeking to replace human creativity. So I think we are really at the beginning of a new revolution, perhaps similar to what we experienced when the internet all of a sudden became a reality. And it's a bit of that kind of crunch time where people think they can use and do everything with anything without really taking into account how this may impact on the lives of artists and their identity, dignity, and cultural diversity. And so I think that is really, in addition to the chapter and the principle on working conditions and fair remuneration, that to me is another part of the charter that is very, comes very close to, it's very close to our priorities right now.
Well, thanks very much, Dominic. You've just combined another question that I was going to have to, about the potential impact of the charter. But Eddie, there are so many things that are close to your heart, and you used to express them very clearly that they are close to your heart. The same question to you. Out of the 8, I know there are some that were really close to your heart. Which ones stand out? And therefore, also, if you could then just combine it with the question about what is the potential impact in your area of work and where you are in South America.
Faray, recuerdo mucho las discusiones sobre el principio de desarrollo local. Intentamos plantearlo de manera holística, de manera completa, 360 grados, que no hablara solo de la construcción de capacidades en las poblaciones, del recurso que se pueda dar, sino también primando siempre la autonomía y la autodeterminación, pensando en que este trabajo de desarrollo local sea a largo plazo. No sean intervenciones que sean momentáneas en ciertos, sino que busque realmente que las comunidades puedan ser partícipes de sus propias decisiones, que puedan tener libre albedrío. Y para mí eso es absolutamente importante porque lo puedo aplicar en mi trabajo, lo puedo llevar a los lugares donde yo desarrollo los proyectos y digamos que complementado con el resto de principios, como decía Dominique, es una gran receta, ¿cierto? Que para todos nosotros que desarrollamos proyectos, pues va a ser importantísimo para poderlos llevar a cabo de manera, digamos, donde prime la justicia en estas relaciones entre los diferentes agentes.
Thanks very much, Eddie. In the interest of time, I'll also ask the same questions to you, Katrina and Mary, Julie, about which ones will stand out for you, which ones are close to your heart, and what are the direct impacts in your area of work. And if you then could just share with us the possibilities for the future for the charter. And I will then ask us to just close from there, and I'll thank you after this. But the two of you, starting with you, Marie-Julie, and then Katrina, you can finish off and round it up.
Yes, thank you. So I have to say that I really support what Dominic just said, because if I really had to choose one, probably I would choose the same as Dominic today. But if we can maybe take this from another perspective and also see that we can use an angle, for instance, the challenges brought by the digital environment, and look at how the 8 principles can help us to tackle those issues and challenges. So the fair culture principle brings a human rights-based perspective and supports a holistic approach to the protection and promotion of the diversity of cultural expressions. So if we take the example of the streaming platforms, principle 2, 3, 4, and 5, respectively, on access to diverse cultural expressions and resources, the promotion of non-discrimination and gender equality, local development, and market access, it all calls for vigilance on adverse risks, as much as for highlighting the potential of those platforms to support advancement regarding the discoverability of diverse local and national cultural contents. Moreover, Principles 6 and 8 on digital equity and ethics and on public and consumer awareness are intrinsically linked to assessing the benefits and mitigating the impacts on generative artificial intelligence, on decent working conditions and remuneration. So I think we can also look at different issues and see how all the principles can help us to answer to those challenges.
No, thanks very much. That is what Dominic talked about when he talked about complementarity of these 8 principles, and I think Jordi outlined that as well. Katrina, you agree, and you have the opportunity to round off. I'm sorry, I'd have to sort of round it up. We will listen to other panelists and then come back to you in other sessions. But Katrina, what are your thoughts? Final thoughts?
I think I cannot choose a principle. I love them all. I think that we took a lot of time figuring out what we would put in each of those principles. I think what is most valuable about all these principles as we have written them up is how it always balances out the rights of the most oppressed in the cultural sectors and the value of the kind of development that we all believe arts and culture and creativity should have in all our contexts. And so we kind of always made sure that we represented everyone across the cultural hierarchy, from the workers at the bottom of the totem pole to the capitalists high up in that hierarchy. And we tried to figure out a way to make this something that we would all agree to, because fairness is not a difficult concept to embrace. Fairness seems to me like the most basic thing and the most human thing that we could all aspire to at this point in time. And to bring that into the arts and culture and creative sectors is almost unbelievable. It's almost unbelievable that we took this long. But now that we're here, I feel like there is absolutely no reason for anyone to say no to it.
Great. Thank you very much. That was a nice way of rounding it up. Katrina, you said you love them all the 8 principles. I'd say Dominic said complementarity of them, but you just said, rounding it off, that you love them all, and that the concept of fairness is such a basic and obvious thing to expect for all of us. So thanks very much once again, panelists. You've been fantastic, and thanks very much to you for all the work that you've put in to where we. We'll have a performance, the second one, from this time around from Asia, and we will have a trio, Gulzoda, who will see a performance by them. They may not be here with us today, but I will share a statement from them, and then we will listen into one of their performances. Trio is led by Gulzoda, who is Kudo Yazarova, excuse my pronunciation, who is on vocals, and she is the lead. And then Begzod Safarov, who is on the long neck lute, and Faru Yoyidov, who plays the board fiddle. They will play a performance from them is called Shashmakwam, a traditional folk music from Central Asia. The statement from Gulzoda is as follows, and I will read it. She says, in my hometown, Bukhara, and in Central Asia, a distinct cultural environment has arisen over centuries. Both men and women contributed equally to the creation and to the continuation of the cultural environment and tradition. Female artists made a significant contribution. Shashmakwam, the performance we hear, is an oral tradition that has exclusive sound when it is performed by female representatives. I'm delighted to be contributing to the preservation of Shashmakwam and spreading it worldwide. I want to express my gratitude to all who support me, female performers, and Fair Culture Charter, as it is an important manifesto for this mission.
Yaşım sarık, yüzüm
Well, thank you very much. That was the Gozoda Trio from Uzbekistan. Anu, I'll hand back to you, one of our very dear and important colleagues. Back to you, Anu.
Thank you, Farai. And before I invite our next guest, a reminder once again that the charter is now online. Do read, do explore it, and do let us know what you think about the charter. And now, our next guest, Veronique Guillermo, UNESCO Chair on the Diversity of Cultural Expressions at University Laval, Canada, and the Chair of our editorial team for the Fair Culture Charter. As we have learned today, the Fair Culture Charter is inspired by the Fair Trade Movement, which is a global initiative aimed at ensuring fair wages, better working conditions, and sustainable practices for producers in the developing world by promoting ethical trade and consumer support. Veronique, what have been the learnings from fair trade for our Fair Culture Charter? Over to you.
Merci Anupama et bonjour à toutes et tous. Il est vrai que l'esprit du mouvement Fair Trade imprègne tout le texte de la charte Fair Culture. La pratique qui s'est développée en matière de commerce équitable au fil des décennies et surtout les tombées positives du mouvement Fair Trade ont réellement inspiré les rédacteurs de la charte. Pensons notamment à la sensibilisation des consommateurs, aux conditions de travail et à la qualité de vie des personnes qui sont impliquées dans la fabrication de certains produits. La sensibilisation aussi eu égard à l'impact environnemental de certaines productions. Cette sensibilisation est essentielle à l'essor d'une demande pour des produits plus éthiques. Or, pour que de tels produits existent, il faut que le consommateur paie un juste prix. Et ce prix, c'est celui qui doit être payé pour que les travailleurs obtiennent une juste rémunération qui se traduira par une amélioration de leur niveau de vie. Et pour que tout ceci soit possible, les acteurs privés doivent être impliqués. Ils doivent adopter des pratiques responsables. Si, par exemple, dans le secteur du café, on a pu mener à des partenariats entre producteurs et de grands distributeurs pour faciliter le commerce de produits équitables. Des impacts tangibles découlent de ce mouvement de solidarité créé par l'étiquette Fair Trade. Ce sont des millions de travailleurs qui bénéficient aujourd'hui de conditions de travail plus équitables, des dizaines de milliers de produits qui ont la certification Fair Trade et qui sont distribués dans 143 pays. Ces retombées générées par le commerce équitable sont importantes et elles nous incitent à réfléchir peut-être différemment sur les façons d'améliorer les conditions de travail des artistes et de redéfinir les termes des échanges culturels entre les différentes régions du monde. Mais il a fallu être prudent, il faudra être prudent aussi dans les années à venir, car les industries culturelles et créatives diffèrent des secteurs agricoles ou du textile. Maison dans le domaine culturel, le produit ou le service culturel est souvent indissociable du créateur. Ces produits et services sont portés par les créateurs. Et en plus, chaque secteur, le livre, la musique, le cinéma, les arts visuels, les arts du spectacle, chaque secteur a ses propres spécificités qui représentent un défi et représentera un défi pour la mise en application des principes qui ont été retenus dans la charte. Mais au-delà de ce défi, il est clair que pour plusieurs principes du fair trade, il y a une transposition qui est possible dans le domaine de la culture et aussi que les objectifs à atteindre sont similaires. Par exemple, et on en a parlé déjà, il est fondamental de garantir une juste rémunération des artistes et des autres professionnels de la culture. Et entre autres, à l'ère des technologies numériques, on le sait qu'il y a des modèles d'affaires qui génèrent de grandes iniquités. Euh, Quand on pense aussi à la manière dont les œuvres protégées sont utilisées par les systèmes, il y a un réel besoin de se pencher sur la répartition équitable des revenus tout au long de la chaîne de valeur des industries culturelles et créatives. Aussi, on peut s'inspirer du fair trade pour penser à de nouveaux moyens de soutenir les communautés locales, incluant les créateurs à travers des investissements dans les infrastructures ou des initiatives de renforcement des capacités. Enfin, on pourrait éventuellement imaginer dans l'avenir la création d'un label Fair Culture ainsi que de mécanismes de certification des œuvres et des services offerts de manière responsable. En ce sens, il faut aussi voir aujourd'hui comme une étape préliminaire pour aller encore plus loin. Un point que je tiens par ailleurs à souligner, mais cela a été dit aussi, c'est la complémentarité de la charte avec les instruments juridiques de l'UNESCO. La charte ne vise aucunement les remplacer, mais bien à les compléter. Les instruments de l'UNESCO jouent un rôle central dans la mise en œuvre de politiques qui ont des effets réels en termes de soutien aux créateurs, aux industries culturelles. Et ces instruments mettent aussi en place des lieux d'échange et de partage des bonnes pratiques. Donc, la charte Fair Culture complète ces instruments en cherchant à mobiliser directement un ensemble de participants, dont les acteurs privés, pour améliorer les conditions de travail des artistes. Mais bon, tout cela nécessite des efforts. Les principes énoncés dans la charte lancée aujourd'hui, parce que cette charte, elle aura une portée réelle et elle est abondamment diffusée. Et si nous développons dès aujourd'hui le réflexe d'y faire constamment référence, et toutes les occasions devront être saisies. Et surtout, il faut intensifier le dialogue avec les acteurs privés, en particulier les plateformes de contenu culturel et les développeurs de systèmes d'IA qui carburent aux données et donc aux œuvres qui sont produites par les artistes. Il y a un énorme travail de sensibilisation à faire, mais je crois sincèrement que la charte qui est lancée aujourd'hui nous engage sur la bonne voie.
Much, Veronique. We hope in the next 45 minutes that we have, we can pick up on some of these important points that you have raised for further discussion among ourselves. Thank you once again, and over to you, Farai.
Great, thank you very much, Anupama. Our next session is going to bring again another group of guests who in their own different area have contributed so much to this process. So I will introduce these three guests and they will have a discussion, a conversation with Anupama on the way forward for fair culture. The first one is Claudio Ribeiro Kraus, Director of External Relations. Fair Trade, you're also a member of the advisory committee for the fair culture. The next guest is Toussaint Kendrebego, Secretary for the Convention of the Protection and Promotion of the Diversity of Cultural Expression at UNESCO. And, he's going to bring us insights of the global cultural policy making that UNESCO spearheads. And then the third guest is Luanda Smith, one of our colleagues on the editorial team. Luanda Smith is CEO of Creatividad y Cultura Global in Mexico. So over to you, Anupama, to have a chat with the three guests.
Thank you, Farai, and welcome to our three guests, Claudio, Toussaint, and Luanda. Think of this conversation as a bit of a rapid-fire session in terms of the links between the spirit of the 2005 convention and the Fair Culture Charter. What have we gotten right? Toussaint, over to you.
Thank you very much, Anupama, and also Farai. I'm very pleased to be with you today, and I would like to sincerely thank the German National Commission for this important initiative. UNESCO is very delighted to be part of this launch, and also to work with the German National Commission on the chapter. And coming back to your question, Anupama, I will now switch in French to say that, as mentioned by Jordi and Véronique, bien évidemment, cette charte est complémentaire aux différents instruments normatifs de l'UNESCO qui ont été cités, notamment la recommandation de 1980 sur la condition de l'artiste et également la convention de 2005 sur la protection et la promotion de la diversité des expressions culturelles. Quand je prends l'objectif du moins le principe 1 concernant les conditions décentes de travail et également la rémunération équitable, cette question qui est au cœur même de la recommandation de 1980 sur la condition de l'artiste. En prenant également les autres principes comme l'accès à une diversité d'expression culturelle ou même les principes d'inclusion, de non-discrimination, la question du gender balance, et également la question de l'accès à des marchés ou encore les questions de culture and sustainable development, etc., etc., sur la question du digital, c'est autant de questions qui sont adressées dans le cadre de la Convention de 2005. Et je voudrais également dire qu'au-delà de ces deux instruments que j'ai cités, l'UNESCO a adopté une recommandation en 2021 sur l'éthique de l'intelligence artificielle et bien entendu les principes, par exemple, concernant le Digital Equity and Ethics trouvent effectivement leur application, leur complémentarité dans le cadre de cette recommandation sur l'éthique de l'intelligence artificielle. Et je terminerai également par citer un autre instrument de travail de l'UNESCO, qui est le cadre de l'UNESCO sur l'éducation culturelle et artistique, qui a été adopté cette année et qui trouve également sa résonance dans les principes 7 concernant le respect pour l'environnement et dans le principe 8 concernant Public and Consumer Awareness. So, pour dire à quel point effectivement l'UNESCO est heureuse de s'associer à cette initiative parce que nos instruments en fait sont complémentaires et permettent, comme cela a été dit, mais on reviendra là-dessus, d'adresser en fait des publics assez complémentaires et différents.
Thank you very much, Toussaint. Now I will turn to Luanda and ask you, from the point of view of practitioners on the ground, have we drawn the right lessons in terms of relating to the realities on the ground for the cultural sector? What is your take on the Charter?
Yo diría que, por supuesto, se conjugan perfectamente bien las lecciones del comercio justo con el Fair Culture en nuestro capítulo, en nuestra carta, teniendo como centro de la carta a los artistas y trabajadores del sector creativo y cultural, el aplicar las lecciones del movimiento de comercio justo a los bienes y servicios culturales nos permite visibilizar el doble valor simbólico y económico de los mismos en un diálogo respetuoso de las necesidades de cada región, que esto es algo que ya mis compañeros del equipo editorial ya han compartido, ¿no? La diversidad de regiones, la diversidad lingüística y la forma en la que se trató de considerar todas las necesidades regionales para construir la carta, una carta que fuera fácil de leer y accesible a todos los agentes. Para lograr todo este diálogo es indispensable la participación de los agentes del ecosistema creativo y cultural para lograr un entorno propicio para el respeto tanto de los derechos culturales como de los derechos económicos, sociales y colectivos. Así, la importancia del flujo equilibrado de contenido cultural no solo permitirá la promoción y difusión de la diversidad de las expresiones culturales, sino generar dinámicas económicas sostenibles que favorezcan el crecimiento de los mercados locales, como bueno, ya nuestra compañera Eddie ha compartido en el caso de Colombia, y creo que en todas las regiones del mundo es indispensable considerar que para lograr un flujo equilibrado de bienes y servicios culturales es importante el desarrollo y el crecimiento de los mercados locales.
Now I think we'll turn back to Claudio again. Have we gotten the right lessons from the fair trade movement? Over to you.
From my point of view, I mean, the editorial team and the advisory group have done a tremendous work. I mean, I came in a little bit late, but we were represented by Nicole Mishaba. So I think the lessons from fair trade practices, we see everywhere, and because fair trade culture charter, it clearly like mirrors some of the core principles of fair trade, such as ensuring equitable relationships, promoting fair working conditions, and safeguarding the rights of vulnerable groups. So fair trade has demonstrated that ethical practices in trade can have a transformative impact. So in the charter builds on this, applying those same principles to the cultural and creative sectors. So this approach to fairness by addressing systemic inequalities and advocating for just remuneration is something that resonates deeply with fair trade, with our values, let's say. So he also acknowledges the cultural goods and services. So like fair trade goods are not just economic commodities, but are linked to the human dignity, identity, and also rights.
Thank you for that, Claudio. I think I'll stay with you, and in the interest of time, I'm going to combine some of the questions I thought we might have more detailed discussion time for. So to stay with the Fair Trade Charter and its link to the Fair Culture Charter, so I'm wondering, what do you see as the possible impact of our Fair Culture Charter in a year from now, 2 years, 3 years from now? And what synergies do you also see between our two movements, fair trade and fair culture?
The charter is comprehensive, and we try to also aim in that direction, and it's ambitious. It tackles not only the economic aspects, but also the social and environmental dimensions of fairness and culture. So the holistic approach increases the likelihood that the charter will have a meaningful impact. So that's our hope, I believe. So by aligning itself with international frameworks such as UNESCO and also the UN Sustainable Development Goals, so the charter gains credibility, which is something important, and standing. So its potential impact lies in its ability to create systemic change, especially if you can effectively engage with major industry players, including digital platforms and multinational corporations. So like fair trade, its success will depend on the strength of its implementation and, let's say, the level of public awareness and engagement it can achieve, just to be very short.
Thank you for that. You gave us a lot in your 60 seconds. Thank you very much for that. And staying with the sector, the grassroots, people working on the ground, Luanda, I'm going to turn to you and ask you what you see as the way forward. 3 years from now, what's going to be the impact of this charter, and how do you plan to use the charter in your own work? Luanda.
Thank you. Particularmente deseo trabajar de la mano con la Organización Internacional del Trabajo para poner como prioridad este tema en su agenda. Nuestra organización ha estado en contacto con la Organización Internacional de Trabajo en Perú, que lleva a cabo un trabajo muy importante en el tema audiovisual. Sin embargo, no es el caso en todos los países que han ratificado la Convención 2005, y sería importante tocar este tema. Y también tenemos en puerta un trabajo, un proyecto de capacitación con la Organización Internacional de la Propiedad Intelectual en México, para el fortalecimiento de capacidades para artistas y trabajadores del sector creativo y cultural. Desde una perspectiva latinoamericana, yo pienso que la Carta de Cultura para una Cultura Justa nos permitirá cortar con una dinámica, con una noción que en Latinoamérica le llaman por amor al arte, que hace muchísimo daño, es una noción, es una perspectiva que promueve que los artistas y trabajadores del sector trabajen de gratis, ¿no? Como por la causa, le decimos aquí, y esto ha hecho mucho daño a la dinámica. Los mercados a través de pagos justos a los artistas y trabajadores.
Luanda there for a minute. Let's give her a couple of seconds. Luanda, we missed the last part of what you were saying, so if you could just repeat that for us.
Claro. Me gustaría invitar a los diferentes agentes de los ecosistemas culturales locales a fortalecer los propios mercados a través de pagos justos a artistas y trabajadores. Y en este sentido, es muy importante el trabajo que la red de ciudades creativas de la puede llevar a cabo en la sensibilización de las audiencias y la visibilización del talento local. Es algo obvio, pero los artistas y trabajadores del sector creativo y cultural no viven del aplauso. Comen, se enferman, deben trasladarse, tienen familias, tienen derecho a vacacionar, tienen derecho a poder comprar una casa, a tener una vida digna, y esto no es posible si se sigue pensando que su trabajo no debe ser pagado. Yo veo en el movimiento que tiene una postura muy clara y viable de implementar, coincido con todos mis colegas, visualizo una gran participación de sociedad civil y de los artistas para la defensa de sus propios derechos. El ecosistema es grande, implica sector público, privado, tercer sector, pero creo que nosotros como vigilantes de que los gobiernos lleven a cabo su labor, creo que el movimiento para una cultura justa va a detonar una mayor participación de los agentes en el campo.
Thank you for that, Luanda. And last but certainly not the least, I'm going to turn to Tucson to pick up on what Claudio was saying before, that the charter gains credibility by alignment with instruments like the 2005 convention, as we are preparing to enter next year, the third decade of the convention. Do you see the value of this charter in helping with the implementation of the convention on the ground? And what impact do you see for this charter 3 years from now, 5 years from now? Tusa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Anupama. Bien sûr, notre souhait, effectivement, est que les liens conceptuels qui existent entre cette charte et les différents instruments normatifs ici à l'UNESCO se complètent. Et pour ma part, je vois déjà, en fait, un premier aspect opérationnel par rapport à la mise en œuvre de cette charte. Autant les instruments normatifs de l'UNESCO s'adressent à ses États membres, à travers lesquels, quand c'est une convention, ils prennent des engagements de mise en œuvre. Quand c'est une recommandation, on les encourage à aller dans ce sens. Autant cette charte comprend non seulement, en fait, des institutions publiques, mais surtout comprend le secteur privé. Les grandes entreprises, en fait, les multinationales, les plateformes de numérique qui ne prennent pas, elles, des engagements vis-à-vis de l'UNESCO, mais qui peuvent les prendre dans le cadre de cette charte. Effectivement, cette complémentarité au niveau des différents stakeholders de l'écosystème de la culture est absolument à la fois complémentaire et importante pour que cette charte puisse avoir un impact. Je reviens également sur un aspect opérationnel qui est que l'UNESCO est engagé avec ses États membres pour reformer les cadres nécessaires pour promouvoir des conditions de travail décentes et également la juste rémunération des artistes, des professionnels de la culture. Et dans ce cadre, nous avons un programme UNESCO Ashberg pour les artistes et les professionnels de la culture qui intervient justement pour accompagner et soutenir le gouvernement. Naturellement, les objectifs et les principes de cette charte seront vivement encouragés à être intégrés dans le cadre des réformes que nous encourageons les pays à apporter. Un autre aspect est que l'UNESCO est actuellement engagé dans un processus de réflexion sur comment renforcer des échanges beaucoup plus équilibrés de biens et services culturels, favoriser la mobilité des artistes. Et dans ce cadre, nous avons un groupe intergouvernemental de réflexion sur particulièrement la mise en œuvre de l'article de la Convention qui a trait à cette question spécifique. Et bien entendu, cette réunion, elle commence demain ici au siège de l'UNESCO et la charte fait partie des éléments effectivement qui vont contribuer également à nourrir la réflexion de ce groupe d'experts. Parce que finalement, l'UNESCO est convaincu que c'est à travers finalement le partenariat que nous pouvons avoir sur le plan à la fois conceptuel de nos différents instruments, sur le plan opérationnel également, que l'on pourra faire avancer cette question par que le chapter en fait entend adresser comme spécificité. Et nous nous réjouissons effectivement de pouvoir poursuivre cette collaboration avec la Commission allemande pour l'UNESCO et bien entendu pour l'ensemble des stakeholders impliqués.
Thank you very much, Toussaint, Luanda, and Claudio. It's very heartening to see your trust in the value of this charter to work with a variety of stakeholders, from governments to artists and cultural workers. It is an ambitious but holistic charter we have heard. And an important point that really resonates for me is that it could be used as a valuable tool to begin much needed dialogue with industry players, digital and technology players, something that Veronique also highlighted in her presentation. So thank you very much to Toussaint, Luanda, and Claudio for your thoughts. And now I would like to invite our next presenter, Annabel Jessen, who is the alternative coordinator of RICAM Argentina, which is the specialized meeting of cinematographic and audiovisual authorities of the Mercosur. She's also head of international and institutional management at INCAA, which is Argentina's National Institute of Cinema and Audiovisual Arts. And she is going to tell us about a case study that relates to, of course, fair culture, but also cultural diversity and support for the Argentine film industry. Over to you, Annabel. The floor is yours.
Bueno, ¿qué tal? Mucho gusto. Muchas gracias por la invitación de este espacio de reflexión. Consideramos que es muy importante para la actividad cultural y audiovisual particularmente en el caso que nos convoca. Bueno, les cuento un poco que RICAM es un organismo especializado en audiovisual que depende del Mercosur, que está integrado por las autoridades cinematográficas de cada uno de los países que la integran, de Argentina, Brasil, Paraguay y Uruguay. Tiene ejes de trabajo sobre los cuales va planificando anualmente su desarrollo y su actividad. Estos ejes de trabajo tienen que ver con coproducciones, muchas veces, para el fortalecimiento y el desarrollo de las capacidades de los productores, con circulación, que va a ser el eje que vamos a tratar, patrimonio, que trata de articular siempre entre las autoridades todo lo que tiene que ver con la conservación del patrimonio audiovisual del sector, accesibilidad, que tiene que ver con procurar incorporar a aquellas personas con discapacidad a través de versiones de audiovisuales que tenga que ver para incluir a las personas ciegas o con dificultades visuales o auditivas. En el caso del eje de circulación, allí trabajamos lo que es la red de salas de Mercosur, que fundamentalmente el objetivo es procurar promover, circular y difundir todo el contenido audiovisual de la región, del Mercosur, a través de las salas del Mercosur. ¿Qué se exhibe? Nosotros ahí exhibimos largometrajes y cortometrajes que se realizan en la región del Mercosur, es decir, entre estos 4 países. Muchas veces, siempre por supuesto, el objetivo es visibilizar las obras de los 4 países, es decir, que cada vez que se hace una programación, siempre se incluyen largometrajes y cortometrajes de cada uno de estos países, con el desafío también de que los 4 países no hablamos el mismo idioma, porque tenemos Brasil que hablan portugués, así que procuramos de también poder soslayar este obstáculo y tratar también de obtener los subtitulados de las películas para poder circularlas dentro de la región. Originalmente funcionaba con un nodo centralizado en Uruguay, pero luego con la pandemia y con las nuevas tecnologías nos dimos cuenta que éramos mucho más eficientes descentralizarlo, es decir, que todo lo que es la red de sala funciona dentro de RECAM, pero los nodos están descentralizados en cada una de las autoridades cinematográficas, de manera tal que cada una de estas autoridades o cada uno de estos nodos puede adaptar esta circulación de contenidos a las necesidades de las salas y las necesidades también capaz normativas de los sectores, ¿no? ¿Qué programamos? Largometrajes y cortometrajes, son muy bienvenidos todo lo que tenga que ver con ciclos. En los ciclos tratamos de mostrar ciclos que tengan que ver con infancias, con la actividad de las directoras mujeres, obras que tengan que ver con coproducciones entre los 4 países. Muchas veces hacemos homenajes o ciclos especiales que tienen que ver con el Día del Patrimonio, o con el Día del Mercosur, o con el Día de las Infancias. También procuramos realizar exhibiciones que tengan accesibilidad, con esta que tiene que ver con uno de los ejes de trabajo que mencioné recién, es decir, que está abierto para aquellas personas que tienen discapacidades, igual puedan disfrutar de un contenido audiovisual de la zona, de la región, que hable de nuestras inquietudes, ¿no? ¿Cómo hacemos nosotros para hacernos de este contenido? El ciclo que nosotros, o la red de salas, es un circuito cultural no comercial. Nosotros ahí procuramos también poder exhibir películas u obras audiovisuales que no son ofrecidas en el sector comercial, son ofrecidas de esta forma para que pueda promoverse culturalmente, y esto permite desarrollar o formar nuevas audiencias y también el desarrollo de talentos y exhibición de pequeños productores, ¿no?, que tienen acceso a una circulación de su contenido de otra forma. De otra forma, si no, es muy difícil que puedan acceder a salas comerciales. Nosotros, como contrapartida de este círculo, donde las exhibiciones son gratuitas para los espectadores, como contrapartida para los realizadores o para los productores, nosotros tratamos de hacernos de contenidos a través de premios en distintos festivales, como el Festival FAM, que es el Festival Especial de Audiovisuales Mercosur, que está en Florianópolis, Brasil, o el Festival Internacional de Cine de Mar del Plata, que es el único de clase A o competitivo de la región. Este premio se trata básicamente de un fee con exhibición no exclusivo, con subtitulado, con versión accesible y con circulación por 2 años en la red de salas. También tratamos de hacer concursos para obtener esos contenidos también que vamos a hacer circular, y también a través de alianzas con embajadas o con otros organismos públicos nacionales e internacionales que también colaboren con el fin de esa producción. Y también incorporamos estos catálogos que vamos realizando, los catálogos nacionales de cada uno de los países, para que puedan programarse los ciclos. Así que bueno, es un desafío muy grande, estamos muy contentos, es muy satisfactorio, y bueno, es la forma que encontramos nosotros de circular el contenido que realizamos en la región.
Very much, Annabelle, for sharing with us the beautiful example of the Mercosur's Red Salas Digitales, by widening access not only for audiences, but also for directors and producers. You've really embodied the spirit of fair culture. Thank you for that sharing. And it's time for us to have some conversations among ourselves and not just listen. So I'm going to hand the floor to Farai to tell us how we can do that. Over to you, Farai.
Great. Thanks very much, Anupama. We're going to have a sort of a 15-minute, hopefully 15, maybe 10 to 15 minutes in the interest of time, breakout sessions where we'll allow you to interact, engage actively, please, and share best practice, ask questions, and hopefully give feedback on the launch and the process and what you've heard today, and also give us some ideas about the best possible ways of disseminating and inviting other people to join the movement of culture. You will have received information about how to separate ourselves into groups. There will be 6 groups, 2 in English, 2 in French, 1 in Spanish, and feel free to actually now take a breather and give us feedback of what you've actually had so far. And then we'll meet you again in about 15 minutes. Emily.
Thank you very much for this session. My name is Emily Njero from Kenya National Commission for UNESCO. I've actively participated in formulation of this charter, Fair Culture Charter, and we are happy in Kenya. We've been pushing for fair practices for culture, and we do believe that this Fair Culture Charter is going to inform and actually consolidate the efforts by different players through the movement, where we are going to invite both private, public, and also civil society organizations to join the movement so that we can advocate and ensure implementation of the 8 principles of the Fair Culture Charter. Thank you. So as I think we've been told, this session will be reflecting on what has happened, and participants are given an opportunity to share or to ask a question, comment, or give contribution on what they think we need to do. Thank you very much and welcome. And I think what we've been told is participants will be given very few minutes. So if you get an opportunity, please speak quickly so that we'll be able to cover as many people as possible. Welcome. Thank you. Yeah, you're free to raise your hand. Yeah, I can see we have Kimani Njogu from Kenya.
Yeah.
Yes, Professor Kimani Njogu.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I've really enjoyed the conversations and the interaction. I think that what is now required is really dissemination of the charter, to making sure that we develop a framework for its dissemination. That means training and work plans to ensure that there is fairness in the sector. So I think in the case of Kenya, our work at the Creative Economy Working Group and civil society will be to move this forward. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. Next, we can have Peter Mundamba.
Yep.
Very quickly.
Yes, I'm here. Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm glad to be part of this conversation. I work with DocuBox, the East African Documentary Film Fund, and the main purpose of our existence is to provide support to filmmakers and to provide, apart from funding, also be able to see them get trained to make incredible films. My question and my contribution is mainly on remuneration and at the same time fair play when it comes to the film space. Because I think for the longest time, there has been the downplaying of the African culture when it comes to film. And at times, what I would say, looking down upon what our cultural pillars would end up being. And at times, we are also been asking ourselves, how do we get to a place where there is a fairness in the way actors are treated, whether on set or on film, and also the way our culture is taken and regarded when it comes to the practice and the art of filmmaking. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mundamba. I can see we have Avir. Welcome, Avir.
Hello. Hi, Emily. Hi, everybody. I just wanted to congratulate the whole team. I think this is really a fabulous initiative, and I think it's going to be incredibly useful if we can find a way to have this kind of conversation in all of our national contexts, and also consider how and where we insert it into policies that we are devising and coming up with, or strategies, or in legislation, or even in practice. So I just wanted to put that out there, that somehow we need to translate, as we have found needing to translate UNESCO conventions, the same will be with the FAIR Charter, is how to translate that directly into practice and into the heart of how governments think about artists and the work of culture and the arts. So thank you very much, guys. Well done.
Yeah, thank you very much, Avir. And I think you have our comments. Then we can go to Pundo. I'm told we have 3 minutes. So
thank you.
Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Mine is just a clarification. Having had a glimpse at the principles of the, first of all, I want to congratulate the people who came up with the charter. But having had a glimpse at the principles of the charter and also looking at the provisions of the recommendation of status of the artists, how do the two documents speak to each other? Somebody tried explaining that, but I didn't get it. Would I just be made to understand how this charter also speaks to the recommendation of the status of the artist, and what is the need for, again, bringing in the charter if already there was recommendations of the status of the artist? Thank you.
Actually, the charter speaks very well to the recommendation on the status of the artists, because it talks on the socio-economic rights. And when you look at the charter, the 8 principles, they are speaking on what needs to be done. And the reports given to UNESCO in the recent past show that nothing has improved much about the conditions of the artists. And what the charter is going to do, it is going to actually mobilize advocacy to ensure that better policies in line with the Modiakar Declaration, that we have transformative policies that respond to those commitments, both in the 2005 Convention and also in the 1980 recommendation. Thank you. We have another hand. I can't see, maybe. Yeah. Yeah, and I also think the same answer responds to the question that has been asked by Mundamba about how film workers, how they are treated. I believe through the more advocacy and stakeholders working together, we can be able to push for implementation. Because if we push for the implementation of the recommendation on status of the artist and the 2005, I can assure you the 8 principles of the charter will be met. But this requires many stakeholders to join hands, both public, private, and also civil society. Thank you.
Sorry, Emily, can I just come in very quickly there? Another way of explaining the complementarity of this process with the UNESCO processes is that this charter works outside UNESCO's main initiatives, but it strengthens the implementation of, say, the UNESCO Convention. So the charter is not legally binding, but it's a call for a movement that helps strengthen all the processes that UNESCO is involved with in terms of global policy making.
Any other comment, question, recommendation, or know what we need to do?
I think there was that statement that the charter should end up being adapted by governments, so that it ends up being entrenched into whether it is government policies and the like, because a number of times we have these charters and I've always at times governments getting into a space and they agree to sign treaties, but they are never implemented. I hope that if they do this, then they sign it up and they also implement.
Thank you very much. Look, we are back in the main group in plenary. We had hopefully all of us, a fruitful sort of a breather, just absorbing all the things that we just went through. And this is not the end. We have an invitation for all of you to continue contributing your ideas and allow us to then make this text into a living document. We're going on to the next session. There are no reports that were required for this breakaway session. I'm going to hand the process back to Anupama, who will lead us into the next session.
It's time for some music, and our last cultural performance for this launch event is from Colombia. They are the Nirat Alarcon Trio from Colombia. I'd like like to introduce the group in my words and then in their own words. Niret Alarcon brings together Niret Alarcon on vocals, Alejandro Carvajal Quiseno on guitar and the quena, and Juan Carlos Montes Garcia on the tiple and guitar. This trio interprets Colombian folk music from the Andes region. And in their own words, they say, "My songs celebrate female autonomy and present an insight into the daily life of the women of my country, from their originality, their resistance, and the various strategies that allowed them to reconcile creative work with domestic responsibility. The music I perform is of rural origin. It claims the cultural diversity and the creative expressions of each community as essential values for humanity. The songs I carry around the world not only evoke feelings and emotions, but they also record historical experiences and social phenomena. In promoting and cherishing this rich diversity of perspectives and experiences, I stand with the Fair Culture Charter." We will now enjoy the trio's interpretation of Estampas by Luciano Diaz.
El bailón está que arde, la candela está encendida, ilumina la enramada, circuitos de las luciérnagas, en el horno los bizcochos calentanos se preparan. Espumas de chocolate en el molinillo quedan, dale que dale con palo firme que el panelón se pega. Sople la brasa, saque el bizcocho que el chocolate espera, dale que dale con palo firme que el panelón se pega. Sople la brasa, saque el bizcocho que el chocolate espera. El trapiche gira y gira moliendo la caña dulce, el camino de la bestia marcando circunferencia. A un lado descansa un rancho, la familia y su brega. Un huipa con un palito asusa la mula terca. Muele que ya la caña llora guarapo dulce. Retuerce el vástago, el trapichero, la vasija se nutre. Muele que ya la caña llora guarapo dulce. Retuerce el vástago, el trapichero, la vasija se nutre. Eso, ¿y qué tal si nos vamos a hacer tamales? El tamal está naciendo cuando se cortan las hojas, deshilachando la vaina, correteando las gallinas, se está alineando la masa para cocinarla enseguida. Hay un arrume de leña pa' que arda bien la cocina. Saque ese perro que está velando, amarra el tamalito, bien apretado con nudo ciego, sírvalo calientico. Que saque ese perro que está velando, amarra el tamalito, bien apretado con nudo ciego, sírvalo calientico. Los cerezos madurados en cafetos de caturra, se calcula que la soca en septiembre ha florecido, del almacigo ya brotan chapolas para la tierra. Del corral saque el abono, tenga cuidado con la limpia, cuídeme bien ese semillero como si fuera suyo. Sale el crucero, punto de siembra, no lo demore mucho. Cuídeme bien ese semillero como si fuera suyo. Sale el crucero, punto de siembra, no lo demore mucho. No lo demore mucho, no lo demore mucho.
Thank you for that lovely performance to Niret Alarcon Trio, a beautiful blend of folk and contemporary. And now over to you, Farai.
Great, thanks very much, Anupama. We're coming towards the end of this very important day of the launch of the Charter. I'd like to call upon someone who is, and his team worked a lot to make this particular event possible today. Lutz Moller, who is the Deputy Secretary General for the German Commission for UNESCO. Lutz, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Anupama and Farah. You have done an excellent job today on moderating us during this launch session. My job is a little bit to wrap up, and I would like to close with 5 observations. Why do we need this charter right now? There are many reasons, but one of them that has been highlighted by most interventions is that we are in this critical moment with digital economies, artificial intelligence, where we really have to strengthen artists and creatives around the world even more in their sometimes very, very precarious situation. Second point, the great achievement that we want to have with this charter is actually to bridge 2 very distinct domains, which are distinct until today only. The one domain is UNESCO with its international law of the 2005 Convention on Cultural Diversity and the 1980 recommendation on the status of the artist. Both of them address governments mostly, but we need more momentum to reach out to the wider public, to companies, and also to CSO, to NGOs, and to individual artists. And that's what we want to achieve by drawing upon the experience of fair trade. And we have heard from Claudio Ribeiro that fair trade has made this enormous experience that ethical practices, as he has said, really can change practices, can have impact on the ground, can lead to transformation. And that's what we want to do here as well in the field of creative industries and culture. Third observation is this had to be done from the outset, and this is what we have done is through a co-design process, which was global on the one hand, but at the same time also brought together individual artists, cultural professionals, company representatives, sometimes government representatives, and we had all of the members of the editorial team that have drawn up the Fair Culture Charter today with roles in this launch event, and we are so proud of you and of your work. And also most of the members of the advisory board which accompanied this process also with present in this launch, because this really was a collective exercise from around the world and from many different experiences, from science, from arts practice, and from government experience. What this Fair Culture Charter is, we have heard many words about it. It's holistic, it's comprehensive, it's ambitious, it's a recipe with the right ingredients. These were all words that were used today in the interventions of the panelists and the contributors. We heard that we had some hard discussions, that this was a compromise, but a very well-drafted compromise with which all of the participants of the diverse boards and committees that we had set up for this purpose could very well live with. So it's an excellent readable document, and I have to affirm that from my personal perspective as well. We have a very good document, but as the State Minister of Germany has said in the beginning, this is not about a document, this is about a commitment. We want to make this into a movement with as many partners from the corporate sector, from the government sector, from individual artists, from NGOs as possible. And that's why this charter is open for signature. So you can go to the website www.fair-culture.org. If you go on this website, then you can find links where you can sign this charter as an individual or as an organization. And I'm very happy to report that we have already had 3 signatures during this event, 1 individual and 2 organizations which have signed this charter. We make these signatories of the charter transparent on the website fair-culture.org, list the signatories of this charter, make their commitment visible, and so try to grow and strengthen this collective movement of partners from all parts of the world bringing them together and create this movement, because after all, this is not the end of a process. This is the beginning. We are not there yet where fair trade is. Fair trade already has an emblem and has a certification process for certain practices. This does not exist yet for fair culture, but this is the intention that we build this over the next couple of months and years. It will not be an easy exercise. This has to be done carefully for each sector of the creative industry separately. And of course, we cannot copy paste anything from fair trade, and we will not do that. But we were very happy about the very strong partnerships that have been expressed, for example, by UNESCO itself, who said that they associate themselves with this process, and we try to build it. So I call upon all of you who are participating in the Zoom meeting today, and those who are watching us today or maybe in the next couple of days in the YouTube channel, go to the website www.fair-culture.org. Go to the link where you can sign the charter, sign it, and your support for the charter will be made transparent, and then we can build upon this charter and really make this into a true commitment. And with that, I hand back to Anupama and Farai for the last words. And thank you both again for the excellent work you have done today.
Thank you, Lutz, for that excellent summary and reflection. It's time to say a big thank you to all our speakers who joined the debate today. Thanks very much to our interpreters for making us understandable in more languages than one. Very big thank you, of course, to the German Commission for UNESCO for driving this idea for many, many years and for bringing us to this day where the charter is now out there in the world. And of course, a very big thank you to all the participants who have joined us here today, both on Zoom as well as on the YouTube live stream. The charter from our side has been launched into the world. The responsibility to commit to it, to engage and to transform it both into a movement and into a reality of fair culture for all is now our collective responsibility. As Lutz said, do sign up, do endorse, and do participate in this movement. Farai, the floor is yours for the final word.
Thanks very much, Anupama. Always a pleasure to co-moderate these things with you. Excellent job as usual. Would like to thank the translators as well. We know how complicated it can be, but we often forget sometimes. But translators, well done. And thank you for the facilitation. And once again, thanks to all the colleagues. And can I have a special thank you to all my colleagues from the Global South, in particular, the ones from the African continent. I cannot resist but to say that. And looking forward to working with you in this movement. And the charter, once again, as Anupama said, is not just a dead text in itself, but it is a living text that will grow into something that will affect and engage us in something very important globally. So thank you very much and goodbye to you all. Thank you very much.